You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
How are you feeling now?
You can put in an expense claim.
Phelps bed 1247.
Not now, Phelps.
Why are you just staring at me like that?
Bring me a confession, young Phelps. This is your chance.
Well, you got the gist. Hi, this is Mike Balzer, and this is 3D in Review for 12/23/2017. Only a few more days before I can say 2018. So, the little video is called Phelps, Not Now. This is footage somebody has taken from the VR version of LA Noire, and obviously did some humorous things with it. So you can watch the full length. I'll have a link in the show notes, but you probably have already seen it. Thought it was pretty humorous, and obviously it's kind of motivated a few people to buy it. And later on, we're going to talk about how this game and others are going to be on sale, both in Steam and then also Oculus will have some Christmas sales. So if you're probably wondering what I've got on my head, well, it is my version of the Magic Leap with the VHS tape in front of it to kind of indicate what you're going to be seeing as far as the mixed reality portion of it. As you may have heard or not heard, essentially the mixed reality system from Magic Leap is about the size of a VHS tape, meaning the area that has a viewable screen, if you want to call it that, that objects appear, and it's about halfway between about the length of your arms, and I figured that out to be about 12 inches, and a standard VHS tape is about 7 inches, and I came up with something about 32 to 35 degrees FOV, which is very similar to what you have with the HoloLens. Now, somebody said it's 40 degrees, so maybe their tape was a little smaller, maybe the length of their arms were a little shorter. I don't know, but I thought I'd just put together this little humorous thing to kind of talk about the transition to Magic Leap. Yes, if you're one of the many who've been keeping up with them, they finally identified that there is something going to be available sometime in 2018 for some price. Really, that doesn't pin things down very much, does it? But at least we have an idea what it's going to look like. And as you can see in the picture here, this is an article by the Rolling Stones. Funny, they were the only ones invited to take a look at this. But the guy goes through it, talks about it. I'm not clear if this is an operational unit. I think it is still a mock-up. Uh, and so it hasn't been cleared. No one's really identified that. No one is really sure if what they were using was still a prototype. So my thinking is that that's a mock-up of what it's going to look like, and then you can read the article yourself. Um, Obviously, everybody has had input on it. This is VR Focus's article. But the things that I came away with is one, that this probably is just a mock-up, a final version mock-up, or I should say the creator edition mock-up, which includes the glasses that you see here, the controller unit, and then the little pack that it appears it'll be a battery as well as the control unit itself. And then there's a cable that snakes behind you into the glasses. This is nothing new to me. This is an idea that I thought should be the direction that VR devices go to, especially mobile ones, because it keeps the weight off the front of your face. And more importantly, allows you to use a larger capacity battery and maintain heat dissipation. So I'm all for this idea. It's something that they've written about in their patent, which we're going to cover a little bit later. So what's the other things? The digital light field, as they call it. Excuse me. And the digital light field we're going to cover as well. Um, my thinking is the person who did the review didn't see any depth of field or different focusing planes. And my thinking on that is what they originally thought of doing was, I think, sandwiching 16 of these light guides or light waves. And I don't think they were able to do that. There's probably only about 4 of them, which means the discrete layers is just that, it's discrete. They don't probably blend as well, so they may have had them on or off. The other thing is, which is nothing new, the HoloLens has been using is mapping out your room first in 3D, and that would allow you to do occlusion as well as determine depth. And so that's going to be built in, and then a high-powered chipset for gaming. My thinking here, okay, and I'll be, I think, one of the first to identify this, because I had heard that they had actually been doing some prototyping with NVIDIA chips, and I would think, just from my own experience, from a design perspective, the NVIDIA TX2 might be a perfect chip. In fact, I would not be, I would probably suggest using that. In my experience with the TX1, it provided better graphics at the time than a Snapdragon 821. And the TX2 supposedly has twice the power. It also lends itself better to doing multi-processing. As you're probably familiar, it has the core, the CUDA core, so there's processing that goes in there. There's probably some custom chips as well that may handle some of the burden of things. So all of that together probably makes a fairly powerful unit. The sad thing is, some of the other articles, let's go over to Road to ZR. The point that's being made is that they're considering this a premium experience, and with a premium experience, uh, comes a premium price, they say. And also, this particular version is going to be more of a developer version, so it's probably still going to have some rough edges. So unknown at this time if there's any pricing. Unknown at this time really how it works, its specifications. And the other thing that I think a lot of people were surprised with, this is not going to be available to actually see if you're going to CES, or for that matter, anybody else who's going to CES who could report upon it. So they're still being very, very closed as far as what its performance is, what it actually looks like. But the simple fact is the guy identified a VHS tape, I think is extremely important, because what that tells me is that the FOV is not that much better than the HoloLens. In fact, I think it's going to be about the same, maybe a little bit more. And that has always been one of the weak points with that particular device. The other thing that should be pointed out is the person who was doing the review didn't see any real depth changes. And this is one of the things that the patents at least say, and let's kind of run into the next item. Here's even Windows 10 talks about what problems have not been solved with the HoloLens. So you can kind of look at this as well. Again, all these links are going to be in the show notes. And again, I think this is just a mock-up. I don't think this is the actual unit itself. And then let's see what else. So you can go through this yourself. And then finally, you can go out to Magic Leap. If you want to sign up as a creator, you can do so. And you can scroll down. It's called obviously the Creator Edition. They have it on the front pocket there. I would probably put it towards the rear. Here's your digital light field, as they call it, with lots of device. Creator Portal coming in early 2018 with a supposed SDK. So unknown at this time if there will be an Unreal plugin as well as a Unity plugin. I would assume that to be the case, or an Unreal 3D, excuse me, Unity 3D. And there was, and I can't think of the gentleman's name, but who had moved to Portland, who was in charge of this. He's no longer there. A little curious why that occurred, but it would be interesting to see what will be available from that perspective from a developer's. And even if they'll allow the SDK out if you don't buy one. So you can go through this. They give a lot of different applications, but none of this really sounds new or different. A lot of this was being identified by Microsoft. So let's kind of jump into the patent. This is going to be in the show notes. This is a nice little area because not only does it provide the information on the waveguide, but provides all the illustrations. And we're going to go through a few of these. And I've covered this back in February of 2016. So you can go back and take a look at my, what do you want to call it, review and description of what's going on. But briefly, this is kind of the application that they were looking at. And if you remember, they put together kind of a fabricated a little video that showed this, but it was all actually not done in the headset itself. It was done through who was involved with that. I can't think of them. The people who did uh, Lord of the Rings. Oh, it'll come to me later. So they obviously had kind of patent this idea. We'll see. But obviously, here are the different screens that can be shown. Again, once you map your room and you know the depth information, it's not that difficult, especially if you identify different surfaces. For instance, they have vertical as well as horizontal surfaces to put items on there. It is interesting that this little example here shows a football. If you remember, this is the Microsoft did a commercial around the Super Bowl, I think it was last year, that showed something very similar. Obviously, not so many screens. And again, this all has to be viewed through a VHS size tape window. And to give you an idea again, that's about that. So that's what you're going to be looking through. Nowhere near what you can get out of a VR headset now, which is about between 90 to 110. This is obviously much less. And if you've got an old VHS tape, just put it halfway between your eyes, and that'll give you an idea of what you can see. So, again, like the HoloLens, there will be clipping. So, if you have an object that's not fully enveloped by the light field, it will clip, which obviously will ruin the effect. So, keep that in mind. So, here is their idea. We want to jump back. Back in 2015, I think, when this was filed. This is what they had ideas of it looking like. And then this is what it looks like. Jump back right here. So pretty close. Obviously, the unit, the battery pack is a little larger than that and actually much thicker, but not surprised. You do need a hefty battery, again, with my own design and testing and evaluation to get uh, some reasonable performance. Let's say 2 to 3 hours. I had to supply, what was it, about a 15th milliampere per hour battery. which is about this big, and then obviously it can be made thinner. I'm assuming there are two disc, as I think that was shown earlier, so that you can supply the power to it and probably detach it so that you can apply a new battery so that you can constantly be using it without having to discharge it. I don't know. I'm just, like many people, speculating at this point. Okay, so the waveguide itself, we've talked about this before. So essentially, if you put in a bunch of waveguides, and if you look up the term waveguide, waveguides are made to a specific frequency. In this case, a specific light field, and each of these light fields, let's say, occlude each other. They combine, but because they're set in a lens system that basically focuses at different planes, they essentially separate the components. Again, remember, we have depth information from the scene to these different planes, so that if you have multiple objects at different points, you essentially put that information in each of these planes. And then the eye, naturally, as it looks at one object, will only see that object at that focal plane of that waveguide, which is kind of cool. The fact is, I don't know how thick this is, and I think this was part of the problem. Here you see something with 4 layers. And I have a feeling this is what they finally went with. And then you can see, as these different, and here you have it being transmitted. So you probably have a multi frequency, meaning multi bandwidth signal coming through, and then only those that pertain to a particular wavelength are shot through here. And as you can see, 2 different wavelengths here. And then at right angles, they're reflected into the eye itself. So it's a pretty interesting idea. The other thing that some people have wondered, I guess this particular who put out this review earlier from Rolling Stones said that the object seemed pretty opaque. And again, because of the way the waveguides work, I'm not surprised that's the way it works, because essentially they could literally pass through everything except this particular wavelength, and this wavelength comes in at these particular focal points, and then are just all added together to give the illusion of a I don't know, what would you call it, a magical environment. So again, the problem is you have 2 of these in front of your eyes like lenses, and they are probably about this big in front of your eyes, and then I don't know how thick they are, but in order to hold each of these focal planes, they have to be, I would say, thicker than maybe normal lenses, I would assume, but I don't know. But the fact is, if this is happening, they've figured a way to fabricate this. I do think this is probably going to be fairly expensive. People are speculating this whole unit will be probably what they said 1,500. I have a feeling it's probably going to be 3,000, like the original HoloLens. Um, so, will it be any better? We'll see. Clearly, the design looks pretty nice. Nobody has seen the back, or they haven't shown the back, but here's where you can sign up for it. So I'm wondering if there's a ratchet on the back. It doesn't look like it. So maybe it's just something that you open up and then it wraps around your head. I don't really prefer having something elastic or done with springs, so that it provides constant tension. I'm hoping there's a ratchet behind it. But again, I haven't seen anybody show the back of the head, so I don't know what's back there. So my thinking is just kind of like a couple of springs that you pull apart and then put on your head. And then, as many people mentioned, all these sensors in here, including the 2 acoustics, transducers here, provide audio, and then the rest of these provide the depth finding and probably some other information as well. This gets processed to provide a 3-dimensional aspect of the room, so that you know where different objects are. If I jump back to was it the first picture? No, the second one. As you can see here, they're touting the fact that they can do vertical and horizontal planes, very similar to the HoloLens. And then, as mentioned, with the waveguides, they can process the information coming from whatever the material is into the different focal planes and then send them out. And then that's how you're able to distinguish by looking around what's in focus depending on what you're looking at. So it's unknown at this time. All of the sensors, let's jump back to this, all the sensors appear to be outgoing. Uh, so it's unknown at this time if they're actually sensors that look at the eye itself to determine what you're looking at. I think part of the trick is that each of this lens here, which I think in this is, I have a feeling is just 3D rendered. I mean, all of the objects in the background don't seem to be transparent, really. So I'm thinking this is a 3D render. I think the one on the guy's head is a 3D render. I don't know what Rolling Stones saw. If they do have something, it's probably just a plastic shell, and they still are working with some other type of prototype. Nobody really knows at this time. So with that being said, we really don't know what the lenses are doing. We don't know what kind of distortion they're providing. Again, as I did in my little demo, it, it looks like a VHS tape as far as what you can see through it. So it's going to clip the edges, very similar to HoloLens, and it'll probably have a price when it first comes out, as I mentioned, the Creator's Edition, that you can sign up for here. Unknown how you get it. Once you do that, you probably have to go to Florida to get one. I don't know. Some people are wondering how they're actually going to sell this thing. Try and maybe create something like a what is it? The Tesla. So you have to go into a mall little shopping area to actually try one on, and then you either buy it there or you don't. I don't know. Lots of speculation at this point. All right, so that's enough about Magic Leap. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? Fact is that they're not going to CES 2018 is something to kind of be concerned about too. That means they're still not wanting the general populace, or more importantly, people with some technical know-how to get a hold of this and respond to it. So they're wanting to control the whole experience, and we'll see if that pays off in the long run. Okay, so let me jump over to our next item. So let's look at some updates from the past. If you've got an HTC Vive or Oculus, you're probably already familiar with this, and this is Google Earth VR. I have not actually loaded this onto my little budget VR backpack for my Microsoft mixed reality headset, so I'll have to see if it works with that. I bumped up the memory, so memory should not be an issue with it anymore. So what are the advantages? Now you can jump from the world directly into Street View, especially if there are 360s, and basically jump from one 360 to another. So I guess that is a huge advantage. So if you've got it already, you probably already have the update. If not, try it out. It was cool when it first came out, and obviously it's better. And I've used it a couple of times. All right, let's move on to the next item. Another thing from Google is that they've released the YouTube VR that can work in the Steam, which means if you've got your Rift set up properly, it should work with that as well as the Microsoft VR headset. I have not tried it yet, which means you can now view Google stuff from YouTube, which means also the 360 and the stereo, meaning the anaglyph mode in your VR headset, which should be kind of cool. Unknown at this time. I'll have to try it myself if it supports more than the 2160 that you get with the Daydream. If you can go all the way up to, let's say, 8K content, if you're obviously connected to a fast broad stream. I hope so. I will try that. And if it works, cool. And it's obviously free, just like Google Earth is. Okay, another update, which I'm going to not only show it, but the Vive trackers have actually shipped. Yay! So here it is. Yay! Yeah, it's a little tiny thing. I don't know if it's worth the money, but all right, let me jump back to this screen so you can get a closer look. So there it is. It's kind of neat. It has a standard 1/4 inch thread on the bottom, and then it has these fingers here, which I was hoping that would just be a standard connector, but you're going to have to, if you want to mount this, and you can go out to Valve, and they've got the entire specification for what these pins refer to. But what it does is it allows you to send contact information to the Bluetooth controller in here, so that this information, just like the little handset, can enable buttons and so forth. So I'm going to have to create a little 3D fabricated plate with little spring dimples in here, unless somebody's already created something like that, and apply it to the bottom. And then I've already have a use for this, so I'll show that in a second. But I thought this was pretty cool. And they're here. Uh, Clearly, you can get bands so you can wear them on your knees or your ankles. And so I'll be looking forward to trying this out with Jasper's, what do you want to call it? The HTC Vive cloud recording system that tracks all of these. So pretty cool. And here is the little device I was working on. So you can go out, and I'll have a link in the show notes for this. You can buy this on Amazon for about 17 bucks. It's specifically made to work with a smartphone, and I guess there's some AR apps that you can use to shoot with. Um, I'm not a big proponent of guns, but if you're going to make something, what I've seen that use this little thing are like hundreds of dollars. So for 17 bucks and 99 for this, it's pretty easy. This little thing here was made for a phone connector, so you just take 2 screws, unplug it. Then there's a thread. The more difficult point is that you have to provide information. Since this is already Bluetooth controlled, that means you can open it up, get to the switch, and then rewire it so that you can provide information to those contact pins. So that'll make it a little bit more difficult. And basically make your own gun. So I'll test it out without trigger capability in the next couple of weeks. But it should be very interesting. Obviously, there are going to be other uses for it, but I'll do a full 3D Tech Closet demo and kind of how-to on how to do this yourself. But it's pretty straightforward. And if you want to jump out to Amazon, which I'll do right now, here's the little gun. So as you know, a lot of VR games use the controllers for guns. So this might be a cool way to provide something like Arizona Sunshine. I don't know if it supports extra units, but the fact is, like mentioned, you just there's 2 screws, plastic screws, tapping screws. You just unscrew those, pull the little plate on top off, and then that's it. Works pretty good. And like I said, the only other thing is to find the switch portion on the trigger and wire that up. And there's, like I said, information. I don't know if I'll put it into the show notes, but if I do, there'll be a link out to the open source information on how to use those pins. Okay, so that's the updates from the past. Let's get into our first 3D technology items. This is a metal printer. We've covered it before, but on Monday it will finally be released. And they say it's a desktop. One, you have to have a big desktop. And as you can see there, it's fairly large. And again, this looks like a render, but I guess it will be finally released. And then the other thing that needs to be kept in mind, I had a PDF, but I'll go ahead and download. There's a spec guide on it. Let's learn more. So it's obviously expensive, but you need the printer, a debinder, and then the furnace, which they show here. They don't show the debinder, but essentially you fabricate it, then you put it in the debinder, which is kind of like a solvent that removes the material. And then you take what's been removed and put it into the furnace, which essentially sinters the metal together to fuse it between 90 to 90, is it 96 to 99% fusing. So here's a little demo. So essentially FDM technology, but it uses a binding material to bind the metal so it all stays in place. And then you take it. Yeah, they're just going to run through it again. But then you take it into the different processes. And here they show where, because of the way it's set up, the structures, supports can easily be pushed out once it's been bounded together. And then obviously little cartridges. So if you've got the money, and they say it's 10 times less, but I still think it's probably very expensive. I didn't look up a price, but here you go. You prep it, meaning your design, you print it, then you debind it, and then you sinter it. So again, 3 processes, 3 devices, printer, or actually 4 processes, but the fabrication portion, printer, debinder, and furnace. They start shipping Monday. So if you're interested in something like that and you've got, obviously a need for something like that and have the money for something like that, go ahead and move forward with. I can see this being used in, small design shops that do a lot of metal work. And clearly, being an additive process and not a milling process or subtractive, you have much less material loss. So pretty cool. Again, this will be in the show notes. So let's move on to the next item. So since it's around the holidays again, Maker has always put out a buyer's guide, but for some reason they didn't have any specific article on that. But they do have this website, again, will be in the show notes, that goes through and rates along with more info, but it's a nice clean little table and it gives you a price of each of the units that are out there, and then obviously what was considered the most portable, best for schools, uh, most portable, meaning compact, I guess. But you can go through here and look them up yourself. And obviously the ratings, the TAS 5, which you remember Chris owns this, 90%. The Prusas always seem to do well. 92, they don't look very attractive, open design, but clearly at $8.99, it's a great value and the parts are pretty good. Another cool thing, let's jump out to this since this one is their highest rated unit. They've got this little chart over here, or little inset image that is a 3D or a 360, and then you can zoom in. So that way you get an idea of the layers, and you can zoom out. So I think that's a nice idea. And then they go through and give a description through the machine rating, how it did in the particular areas. As you can see, the dimensional accuracy is really good. The horizontal finish is not great, but the vertical finish is a 5. So let's see, jump back. So let's find another. It's funny, the TAS 6 really didn't do very well at $2,500. And the DaVinci Pro, not very well either. So let's look at this one. This is the Ultimaker 2. Yeah, and they don't have a little image. So some of these reviews I think are a little older. Yeah, that one was published in 2016. So they should have put the dates along with it. So let's look at this one. Yep. So this was, when was this done? Doesn't even have a date. It says 2017. So a little inconsistent. It would have been nice to be able to 3D print and have 3D models of each of them. But it does go through and use the same rating system up here. So you can go through this on yourself. These all seem to be FDM based. Let's see, this does not go through and review the SLAs. So they used to do that, but there really hasn't been any new SLAs. And obviously the de facto right now seems to be the Form Lab. Oh, well, so there you go. If you're still interested in getting a 3D printer, you might want to check some of these out and see if there's any sales on them. All of them, as you can see, except some of these are fairly low rating, but anything probably in the 70% or higher would probably be something to look at. And obviously you pay for that. So, if you want something to work with, I think this Prusa might be the best choice. The open design, again, it doesn't look very pretty, but the fact is that it's an open source design, and $8.99 might be well worth it. Here's the Prusa i3 MK3, but notice the pricing is just a tad better, but its rating is less. So that's kind of interesting. So again, these are all based upon the maker reviews. Each person may have different feelings depending on, so you might want to check with your friends as well. All right, let's move on to the next item. And this is, I just brought this in here because I'm a fan of Fusion 360 and I saw this. This is Autodesk bought Eagle. And so if you're interested in creating schematics as well as printed circuit boards of devices, you can go back and forth between this and 360 to mount and house your circuit boards. So you can get a free trial, and then if you plan to use this professionally, I think it's $100 a year, which is not too bad. And then if you're a student, you get 3 years free, but you get 3 years free with all of your different Autodesk products. So being a student is kind of cool right now, and Autodesk does a great job of providing products in this particular area. All right, let's move on to the next item. I thought this was very cool. In China, there is what do they call it? Obviously a Buddha statue, but there's one made in a cave. So they went through and they scanned it, and then they have replicated this. I'm pretty sure that this is the actual cave, but they are reproducing this in 3D and using a special type of material that they spray on afterwards to give it a similar stone-like quality. So this is about the largest custom product, and as you can see here, it's coming along pretty well. Is it actually done? And they say it's done. So I don't know if this is the final product here. And if it is, it looks very similar to this one here. So cool. I mean, China has really been doing a bang up job creating very large, intricate objects over the years. And this obviously is just another example of that happening. And so you can go through and read the article, but I thought that was very interesting. Application of both scanning as well as 3D fabrication. And the product or the production process was more or less appears to be photogrammetry. 10,000 photographs were taken over a 2-year period to plot the exact shape and dimensions. They say the dimensions are about with a precision of accuracy about 1 millimeter, which is pretty damn good, especially with something this large. And how many parts they identify? Took 20 3D printers around the clock to print 17.9 meters long by 13.6 meters wide and 10-meter tall grotto. That's pretty amazing. So I should go out and, well, maybe you can go out and find some more information on it. So I'm assuming this, yeah, so this is the actual replica. So it looks fairly realistic. Pretty cool. All right, on to the next item. We covered Dr. Hala Zaret earlier, I'd say about 2 years ago. So it looks like she's done more work. And if I remember at the time, she actually went to Shanghai University to work with the Chinese with this. So she's now back and they have come up with some experimental ceramics. And the cool thing about this is the ceramics um, kind of have it's not shown here, but the ceramics are are a lattice structure and the bone actually grows into it and then essentially displaces the ceramic or actually grows around it so that the bone is actually what is binding the break or the splice. And here they show an example with traditional healing bones with metal screws. In the future, this whole area here would just be a ceramic. The bone would grow into it and fuse back into a natural bone. And this is really cool. I had talked to her. Maybe I'll jump back in to find out if they've made any progress. Here, normally, or I would assume in this case, you would 3D fabricate it outside of the body, then you would implant it. I would like to see a similar process being done through an injector nozzle system directly into the body, kind of a ship in a bottle where you actually construct while the patient is on the table itself. Or, well, I guess that would be the only way. So that way the nozzle can be put in but moved around and the material can be extruded in order to create a larger piece through a narrow hole. And this would be something that would be important to somebody like, say, my wife, who had part of her bone removed above her eye, actually in the orbital root, and it wasn't replaced. And this would allow them to replace that through that same small slit. So that whole process was very unique that my wife went through, but I could see something like this being used in the future to substitute for bone, and then the bone grows into it, creating a stronger fusing of the two components to literally, um, without using a lot of other alloys, using your own bone to create that as seen here. That would not need to be done anymore. Okay, so let's move on to the next item. This is an interesting use of laser scanners. Here is the original, what do you want to call it, platter that was used by Alexander Graham Bell. And this is what let's see, they recorded the word barometer on a glass disc. So now they're able to scan that and then create a replica. So now, and here it is. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this. Yeah, so it goes over a couple of times. So you can go into the show notes and look at these yourself. So I'm clicking on these. Sorry that you can't hear them, but you can go into the show notes and find these out for yourself. I think it's pretty cool. Again, another use of 3D fabrication. In this case, do they identify the 3D scanner that is used? Mm. Irene high-speed disk capture system. So I don't know exactly what the process is, but they give some examples of different methods that were used. Like this was photographic, produced photographically in '85, so that you can hear the difference. And then the different methods of processes being done in order to replicate or reproduce artifacts that eventually will deteriorate, but now we have a way of obviously digitally capturing and then taking that information to create maybe another facsimile of it. And these recordings show how well it actually worked. All right, so let's move on to the next item. So, not really going to cover any games, but if you're interested in buying games, you can get a number of VR games in the Steam store for significantly less. In fact, I will probably take advantage of the Arizona sunshine so that I can play with my stepson, Dan, so that him and I could try this out together. I do have the Windows version, but they did not build in the cooperative play. So I'm assuming that if I buy the Steam version, I would have that capability. So I will probably do that. Plus, there are other things in here that are significantly less in price. You just go through them yourself. So if there's something that you've not wanted to buy and held off, now is your chance to buy it. Keep in mind that a lot of these, there's some bundle pricing, but these are for Steam. So if you have an Oculus, um, Road to VR didn't do an Oculus review, but I went out to their website, which I'll bring up here. And here's what you can get in the Oculus. Uh, Obviously, some Spotlight, little cheapy games. But then they did something kind of weird. They have some winter deals, which you can see more, but they have these winter packs as well. So let's see what they have these red packs so that you can buy a bunch of games at once. But if you own some of these, it doesn't really make out. So, but I guess if you're buying for somebody who just got an Oculus, this might be a great way to get them some software. So it's interesting. The Killing Floor Incursion seems to be the same price here as it is in the Steam store. Keep Talking Nobody, it's $8.99. So this is a good time if you want to run out. Wilson's Heart, that's a great price. I want to try that. Adoption, I'd already purchased this. Now it's only $14.99. The price on Arizona Sunshine seems to be about the same. It's always funny if you get something right away, it's always going to come down in price. So I'm glad I hold off on a lot of these. So Darknet, some of these have been around for some time. Prices keep getting less. So seems to be a few of them. So just go out to the Oculus and take a look for yourself. And obviously, if you already signed up, Oculus has probably sent you a few promotional reviews. So this might be kind of cool. This VR Anatomy, it hasn't come down too much, but that could be something interesting to look at. And also keep in mind there is plenty of new stuff coming out as well. Let's see if I can jump back up. Well, this will take a while, so I won't do that. So keep that in mind if you're looking to get somebody or not a free gift, but gifts in the VR realm, either on Steam or an Oculus. They've got some great pricing. And then finally, I thought this was kind of funny. This is the Axe collection, which now includes a free VR. I like this. VR officially ascended to crappy last minute gift. How funny. But they give this cheesy headset that you put your phone in. But so yeah, you get the Axe cleaning system with the VR headset. I don't know what they're implying here, but without a actual phone that is waterproof. But as you remember, I actually took a shower with the iPhone 7, which was waterproof, and now the what is it? The Pixel XL or the two, yeah, Pixel XL, the the Pixel 2, and I think the Pixel 2 XL are both waterproof as well. So there are, I guess that's what they're implying here, but make sure your phone is waterproof. Not that you want to be in the shower with that. Kind of unknown. Okay, so let's see what else. Oh, the thing to talk about, let's see, is updates and upcoming shows and events. I will bring back 3D in Review on January 6th, and then on January 9th, I will do the next episode of Tech Closet. I will show off, hopefully I'll have the little tracker gun done by then. And let's see what else I'll be showing off. Oh, I'll probably be able to show off more of the animation, including Jasper's Steam VR tracking system. So that HTC Vive, so that if you want to do tracking with it, we'll see how that works out. I'm trying to think of what else. That's kind of cool though, because it can do multiple tracking units and they could be on multiple bodies. And then you would just discern between the two. The other cool thing is because it's tracking within a full three-dimensional space. It doesn't really matter what's in front or behind you, as long as you're not occluding from the top of the light tower. So that's going to be very interesting. Unlike some of these other techniques that Jasper has, where you put a camera in front of you. And so that means you pretty much have to be uh, clear of anything occluding what is in front of you, so it doesn't block it. And there are certain angles that could be a problem if you rotate your body, because then it doesn't see a particular joint. So I see that this type of system would be better. And at $99, they're not that expensive. Um, so if you've already got a PC, you've got an HTC Vive, I think you can get by with buying 4 of these. So for about $400, let's say $1,000 for the full controllers, the trackers, and then obviously a PC on top of that. You have a fairly nice, what is it, about 16-foot by 16-foot area to do motion capture. And if you've looked at some of the other system, that's fairly reasonable. So again, I'm pretty excited to look into that. Well, that's about it. I want to thank all of you through the years. Gosh, it's been close to 4 years now of joining me, and hope you have an enjoyable holiday. Merry Christmas to many of you, which I guess is Monday, uh, and then obviously a happy New Year's the following Monday, and then I'll see you. What is it, on the 6th? On that note, bye.